Alright, so for this last part of this tutorial, I want to show you all those different options that you have if you want to transform your image that is color into a black and white image. And first of all, let me just reduce this down now so we don't actually need this group here anymore. With Shift Command E, I just bring them all together. And from here we have, obviously, like I said, all those different options. So the first one would be if you just go here over your image and your mode, then you can go into a grayscale. And now it asks you discard color information to control the conversion, use image adjustment and black and white. So it will tell you this because, like I said, if I just cancel this for a moment, if I go into my mode here, a lot of printers, they might have problems if you go here over your grayscale, and the issue is that most of them work in the RGB color space, the same how they could also have potentially problems to print your images in if you would work in CMYK color. And yeah, of course this would give you more options, it's a bigger spectrum in color. However, because most printers, they use RGB color, it might cause them an issue if you work with a grayscale. This is a little bit of, the kind of the first version or the second version maybe in Photoshop, where that was their only option, where you could now transform this into a grayscale. So let's just say discard this, and now we just want to actually create a snapshot, because I just want to show you how all of those different versions will look in the end. And now I will just call this grayscale. But as I said, I wouldn't really recommend it, but it's just so that you see all of those different options. And then we just say okay. And with Command Z or Command Z, now I'm back in my RGB color spectrum. So the next step is obviously here that you go over different ways of hue and saturation or vibrance, or you can also go in here, for example, and desaturate. Now you also have a black and white or kind of like a grayscale image. Once more, now I just call this desaturate. That's another opportunity, and with Command Z I just bring this back. Or we can obviously also do the same things up here. I could just go into my hue and saturation, bring the saturation down. That's probably very similar, but let me just take a snapshot of this. This is now hue and desaturation, just so that we know what that is. Oops. Desaturation, and then I just say okay, and then I can just delete this. And similar thing you can also do here with your vibrance. If you bring this all the way down, then it's also nearly black and white, just a little bit of orange left. So then you can also say, okay, let me show you what that would be with the vibrance. And yeah, the issue is obviously with all of those adjustments, they're not very flexible. So you can't go in here and change nor anything. It's either color or no color. And it's obviously nicer if we have different choices here, because you could go ahead and say, if you really wanted to have this classical Hollywood look, then that would mean the skin would be more bleached out, because if you imagine how they worked back in the 50s or even 40s, they would just bring out these massive lights that would be continuous and not strobe like nowadays. You would have just a lot of light on the person, and that would normally be in this typical bleached out skin look, just because of all the light. So one way how we can work in Photoshop, where you have not only black and white, but at the same time already the opportunity to adjust your black and white, is obviously if I just go Command and J, and then I go into Shift Command A, which brings me back into my Adobe Camera Raw. And here I can also say now, okay, please desaturate my image. Now it's all the color is out. But here I can obviously say now, okay, I can go in with my contrast, bring this. I think that looks kind of interesting as well. If I just reduce my contrast, then it nearly looks like an illustrative image. Yeah, why don't we just keep that? Maybe I just play here with my shadows even more. Now it nearly looks like a painting or something. I kind of like that now that I see it. Now I just go okay. And let's just also do a little snapshot of that, because I just thought that's interesting. And this was now my raw let's call this first panel, just so that I know how I did this. Okay, and now if I just delete this and Command J and go into Adobe Camera Raw one more time, then obviously here that's just for you to play. It's a nice playground where you have all those sliders, but it's not really meant for black and white. The area where it was more meant for it was actually in our HSL, and this area you know already. We talked about hue, saturation and luminance, but we didn't talk about this convert to grayscale box. So let's click on that, and let's say now we want a different look here. So the red we can just adjust. That might be interesting for the lip color, for example. Let's bring it down. Now she has this really dark reds on her lips, and we said the orange is normally the reason how we can change skin tones, because there's a lot of orange in our skin. So let me say, well, why don't we go now the opposite and just bleach this out and just create this typical Hollywood look. We can also see if the yellow does anything. Yeah, let's just bleach her out a little bit and just say, okay, this is now our idea of the black and white. And then we can just say okay again and just create another snapshot where we just call this raw, and then this is our HSL, and then we just say okay. And let me just wait a second until my fan cools down again. Okay, I think it is a little bit quieter now and you can understand me a bit better. Yeah, anytime I go into RAW, my fan goes crazy because it just takes so much power in the processing. So let's go back into our adjustment, and I just delete this once more, and now we can go obviously here also into this box that's meant for our black and white, and we have a similar way here. We can also play with the sliders. This time we can just create this maybe a little bit different. Let's go a bit down and maybe not quite so much up, but you see here already the difference to the RAW. Here you have reds and yellows, and in the Adobe Camera Raw, or if you want to do it in Lightroom, you have a few more sliders, so it might be more precise depending on what you want to do. But let's just say for now then this is okay, and I go back into my history, another snapshot, and now I call this Photoshop, the black and white box, just so that I know. Okay, and then I delete this once more, go back into my adjustments, and now I'll just show you once more the gradient map, which you know already. Now I obviously didn't take care of my black and white color here, so I have to just see, okay, here's my black and white. Like I said, if there is at any time where you can't find any of those colors here, you can always just change it in here, or you could also just open this wheel. You can reset your gradients, you can play here with different gradients, or what we did before where we actually saved one of our gradients, which was then the black and white, and you can also now just append this. So anytime you create a new gradient, then you can just load this up and it shows up here as the last one, and then yeah, it's appended. Okay, so now we have our, or my favorite way of black and white, and I just like it because it gives me this really nice contrast that I think it works here very well. And let me just go in and say, okay, one more snapshot, and this is now my Photoshop gradient map. So that's like one of my favorite ways to just have a quick black and white. Again, it doesn't give you obviously a lot of sliders or anything, but I quite normally like this contrast, but that's obviously up to you. And now I just want to show you here the last one, which also can be interesting if you want to create a black and white. Let me just delete this once more. And this is in our channel mixer. And here you can click on monochrome, and now this is set by default. And the thing where you can play with is that you have 3 sliders like red, green and blue, but just be careful that this amount here cannot be more than 100. So if you want to say, for example, I like the idea that we bleach out her skin a little bit, so we could bring this up maybe to like 60 or something, or 61. But see, now you have this warning down here, which means that Photoshop says warning, now something is not quite right with this image, because now you overcooked one of those channels. So if that's the point, then obviously we have to bring one of those down. And again, that depends now a little bit on your idea here. So we could maybe bring the green down, and then normally the blue, yeah, might also be a bit too much on the skin. So let's just bring the blue down to a point where Photoshop doesn't say anything against us, and it's 17. I somehow can't bring this in exactly, but now we have Photoshop back to 100 in the channels. So we have red now with 61, green with 22% or 22%, sorry, and the blue is at 17%. So the channel mixer might also be a very interesting way of just playing with all those different colors, and then you still have a little bit more flexibility than with a gradient map. So let's also just keep a quick snapshot of that, and we can also compare this in a bit, and we say this is our channel, or we said PS channel mixer or Photoshop channel mixer. And just be careful, I just write it here one more time, that this cannot be more than 100, otherwise you might just get weird artifacts on the skin. So these are all those ways that I can think of that you can create in Photoshop itself here. When I just started out with Photoshop, as I said, I like to buy actions, and my favorite action in the day was the company TRA. TRA is TRA, and it stands for Totally Rad Actions, and they gave me this black and white, which was my favorite for a very long time, called Bitchin'. And if I click on that, and I can just say cancel, now I have my Bitchin' black and white action here. And the reason why I liked that, I don't know why it's not showing this to me now, but the idea here behind Bitchin', let me just go back one more time. I don't know why it wanted to bring it down. It just seemed to merge it down, but I wanted to show you the folder. So if I go into my folder, then the reason why I liked it was that once you have here this black and white conversion, which they probably just applied onto the image itself over image adjustments, and here probably any desaturation or in the black and white field, whatever. So it would be applied onto the image itself. But I like I said, when my black and white has this contrast, and they gave me this contrast with a curve layer, and they just brought in this kind of S curve, so there's a little bit more contrast in the whites, and also they darken the blacks down. And obviously if you don't like this, you could just bring this up. But like I said before, back in the day I was quite happy with those actions, because I didn't quite understand all the functionality in Photoshop itself. But now, where I understand obviously a lot of things better, I thought, why do I like this action, for example, better than they also gave me other black and white conversions? But so I always like if you can just create more of a black and white rather than this kind of grayish look, because for me, like I said, I like when I go into my level here and I press down on Alt or Option, and I have a true black in my image and a true white in my image. And I just think that a lot of times when people change their color image into a black and white image, it's not really black and white, it's more like a gray image. So I just wanted to say as my last tutorial here that if you ever want to transform your image, just make sure that it's not losing any contrast, otherwise it looks like a muddy black and white image, and that's not really black and white. So these are all those different opportunities that you have in Photoshop itself. Obviously there are also, let me just take another snapshot just to make it complete. This was my TRA action. I think that's already it. Totally Rad action. So then we just have this as well. And then I delete this. And the other thing you can obviously do is, if you don't like any of this in Photoshop, if you don't want to buy any action, then you have obviously also a lot of plugins that could also do the job for you. And there are, for example, there are different plugins like Alien Skin or Topaz Labs, or like I said, Totally Red. They probably all have some kind of black and white conversion that might fit your needs. However, as we said before, the Nik collection is now for free. Before we had to pay for it when it was from Nik itself. Now, since they are Google, or they were acquired by Google, now they're for free. Sadly, we won't get any more updates, but as long as it works, you can obviously just download it for free. And they have a complete, let me just go up here again. My tablet was too small here. Let me just quickly cancel this. Okay, so like I said, in Filter, in my Nik collection, you will find now this, what they call Silver FX Pro. And this is a plugin from Nik only with black and white options. So if I couldn't make you happy with any of those alternatives that I gave you for black and white, then my last resort is Silver FX Pro. And here you can obviously also click through. They have like classic looks that are already presets, then they have vintage looks, they have modern looks, or you can just press on all and then you have all 38 different options of black and white. And like we did it before, anytime that the option is maybe nice, but you want to just fine tune it even further, then you can always just play here with those adjustments. So let me just do one thing here, just to show you this also as a snapshot. Let's say we want full dynamic harsh. I think this looks terrible, but just to show you the last option that I have here for black and white images. And then we can just click through our snapshots and then you can see what you like. Okay, and here is our totally awful black and white, but just to give you another idea of possibilities, it might look awesome on any other image. So let's just say a snapshot, and this was our Silver FX by Nik. And you can hear my computer goes crazy again, because again the plugins and Adobe Camera Raw normally takes a lot of power to process. And let me just wait here a second until my computer dies down again. Okay, I hope you can hear me a little bit better. And yeah, let's just click through those different possibilities we had here now in Photoshop with our black and white idea. So that was our grayscale. That was the desaturation. Let me zoom in here so you can really see what's happening, because some of these changes are obviously so small you might not even see them when it's zoomed out. Let me just close this down, then it's a bit easier. So this was the grayscale and this was the desaturate. You see it's just a minimalistic lift, or nearly like the highlights are a little bit reduced in the desaturation. Then we went into hue and desaturation, which is pretty much the same. So probably if you just wanted a quick desaturate, that might be easier over our image slider up there. Then we did the same in vibrance, where we couldn't get rid of all the color, but close enough. Then we went into raw, and that was our very funky raw conversion in the first panel, which looks kind of a bit illustrative. Might be interesting to play with that even more. Then we went into the real Adobe Camera Raw function for black and white in the HSL, and we converted this now into a black and white image or monochrome image. From there we went back into Photoshop and played here with our black and white box. So that was our HSL conversion with our orange slider that just gave us the opportunity to lift those skin colors even more. That was now again a little bit darker. Now I went into my favorite gradient map that gives me this black and white conversion. From then we went into the channel mixer. I think that also looks nice. Just be careful that you're not going over this 100%. And from there we went into my action that I like to use back in the day, which is totally red action. And that gives me this crazy contrast, which also might work quite nice, especially when you have this Hollywood look. And from there, the last opportunity where you can change black and white is by Nik, called Silver FX Pro. And this is now a bit too freaky. However, just play with this. And yeah, I hope now I could give you a lot of alternatives of different choices. Let me just switch this off, that looks too terrible, where you can play with and have fun converting your color image into your favorite black and white image.